All right, ready?
Yeah.
The beginning of Twitter Spaces is always so awkward because there's nobody in there, but I'm just going to start up here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you beauties, good afternoon. Welcome to another Friday Flyover episode. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, and today we're going to talk Tony DeAngelo. Not originally on the topic list, but he's on there now. Morgan Frost, some Carter Hart, and the Hockey Canada investigation. And if you're on YouTube, you can see clearly that we're joined by the one and only Rush Joy of Snow the Goalie. If you're not watching live on YouTube, subscribe and set alerts. I'm sorry, if you are watching live, subscribe and set alerts for future shows. If you're in the Twitter space, be sure to head over to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and subscribe to HW Radio. Save your questions for the end. We'll try to keep the show to just a half an hour long. Okay, Russ, so right off the bat, the Flyers gave us a topic. Tony D, let go. Your thoughts?
Whoa. How you doing? Hey,
Not doing too good.
I mean, listen, it is what it is, right? Like, he's gone. I hate being the guy who goes back and points and like shakes his head a little bit here, but like Tony DeAngelo last year, what did we know? They were going to have to trade for his rights if they chose to do so. They did. Chuck did. Gave up too many assets. It never made sense. Gave Tony a contract that no one else would have given him. Certainly not a contract that Carolina was willing to give him. And the joke for over a year had been, well, just wait till next offseason when the Flyers trade him back to Carolina and retain some salary so that they can pay him what they wanted to pay him from the start, right? Because Carolina, for whatever reason, really liked Tony DeAngelo, the player. Chuck Fletcher thought for some reason that Tony DeAngelo was going to come in here and like it was going to work, and it never was, but whatever. This is like yet another move where you go, okay, another Chuck Fletcher guy jettisoned for next to nothing. Just get him the hell off the team. It should tell you a lot about what Danny Briere, Keith Jones, and company think about many of the Chuck Fletcher moves. Who else had been rumored prior to the draft as being sent out? Travis Sanheim, an 8-year contract handed out by Chuck Fletcher. I mean, it's pretty clear as day to see what's going on here, and you know, ultimately, what we'll probably continue to see, they're going to actively work to rid this team of bad contracts. This is not a great look. The buyout is not a great look. It's not a great thing for the cap. Remains to be seen if anyone's going to pick him up. One has to assume that there will be a team that will consider picking him up on waivers, but again, that remains to be seen.
So good points by you mentioning Chuck Fletcher there. And when they brought Danny Briere in as the assistant to the general manager, didn't you kind of think the writing was on the wall? Like, okay, they're grooming him to take over as GM.
Yeah.
Why the hell were they letting Fletcher make these decisions? Like, all right, Tony DeAngelo, you could see if you got him for cheap, sign him for 2 years, big deal. 2 years is 2 years.
Yeah.
Sanheim contract, who the hell let him sign? Like, what was the thought there? You knew that you weren't crazy about the guy. You knew Chuck Fletcher wasn't going to be here for very long, and you let him sign somebody to an 8-year deal? I have a lot of questions about that still, you know. And I mean, you know, we heard rumors they're trying to move Sanheim. I think they could still move him. It's going to be a little tougher now because he's basically has a choice in where he wants to go, if he wants to go anywhere at all.
Another part to that move that was, you know, even more nonsensical. They gave him 8 years. They gave him an AAV that I don't think many teams on the open market would have given him. And by the way, a no trade clause for I think the first 4 years or first 5 years of that deal before it becomes a no movement clause later. Like, it's insanity. It is absolute insanity. But again, for whatever reason, ownership decided ownership at that time, very important distinction, gave Chuck the green light to do that deal. You know,
that's
a year later. I don't want to have to go back and talk about Fletcher Mort as we're calling him now on Snow the Goalie. We will not utter his name. He who shall not be named. Fletcher Mort has been brought up.
Fletcher Mort.
Chuck, you know, Chuckle Mort or something. There are a lot of worse names that people have dropped in comment sections on live shows before, which I will not repeat here. But yeah, you know,
family show.
Better to look ahead, you know.
Yeah, so I guess kudos to Briere and the current management. I mean, Carolina was kind of jerking him around a little bit, right? Like we even heard a prospect name, Massimo Rizzo, would have been somebody that came back. I don't know anything about the kid, 22 years old. That's all I know. Or potential 2024 5th-round pick. Who knows what Carolina's doing? To me, the first thing I thought was, I guess they're trading for Carlson, because I knew that they needed power play help down there, which is why I thought they were still interested in DeAngelo. But, good for the Flyers. They had 3 days, I think it was, after signing Noah Cates to do something like this. Mm-hmm. And I guess they felt this was it for them. They didn't want to wait anymore, or they took advantage of the opportunity. And what is it, 1.6? I think I saw 1.67 against the cap for this year and next after the buyout of DeAngelo.
So one thing that I see here, somebody just tagged me on something. I need to double check. This says on Cap Friendly that the Flyers are going to save $3.3 million in space this year, but lose 1.7 in 24-25. I'm going to keep an eye on that, because that seems a little bit wonky, but I'll do a little look-see here.
Interesting. But, so I would have preferred if they could have moved them and just retained 2.5 for one season. And I don't even care what they would have gotten back, but I guess if it's 1.6, and the Flyers aren't going to be doing anything with the cap space the next couple of years anyways, No,
and the thing that you also can keep in mind here, I'm looking at this right now. So this is showing on Cap Friendly, I see 1.67 for this year and next year is what it shows. But look, ultimately what you have to care about here, if you're a Flyers fan, is he's off the roster. It frees up another spot, whether it's they bring in another vet, whether it's they give another kid a look. Doesn't really matter. He didn't fit. Tortorella, essentially embarrassed him the last 5 or 6 games of the season. It is what it is. He had no future here. There was just no point in dragging it on. And again, this team isn't going to compete this year or next year, so the cap space doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, from a very basic, standpoint, you can look at it and say, hey, maybe it gives you a little bit of flexibility to make a move. If it's this year, if you got a little bit of relief, all right, cool. Like maybe that'll help you in terms of taking on a distressed asset to help a team, is trying to make a bigger move, and you're going to try to get back some draft capital for eating a bad contract. Like, okay, cool. That works this year. Next year, is that 1.67 going to, be the difference between you getting a superstar player to buy into showing up here a year early or not? I can't imagine it will. And if it does, well, I don't know, somebody clip this and bring it back and throw it in my face in 2024.
Hopefully by 2024. Or next season, we're not even thinking about this, right? So it was interesting. And to me, it kind of signaled, okay, they want to turn the page here as quick as possible on some things. They didn't want to play around anymore, which is fine. New era of Orange, yada, yada. Let's see. They got rid of a guy with a not great reputation, right? So speaking of reputation, I kind of want to move along here. Got you for a couple more minutes. Hockey Canada investigation. We were talking about it yesterday. Based off what I've read, there's 8 players that are still kind of being looked at here, right? 8 players named in the investigation. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I read that there's 5 players that are potentially involved in the act, 8 players overall potentially in the room, kind of thing. Is that kind of correct from what you know so far?
I think so. I mean, we all kind of have to go off of the same thing that I tweeted it out yesterday from one of the papers in Toronto, but you have to go back to December is the last time that there were any real meaningful updates put out about what the original complaint was, what the original court filing was. And that sounds like about the right number. I said on Snow the Goalie this morning, and I will say this from now until the end of time. The main thing here, obviously, is that the victim in this gets justice, and that the legal process plays out. But it's been 5 years since the thing happened, right? And the league looks awful. The Toronto, Ontario police look awful. Hockey Canada looks awful. There's no reason that it should have taken this long. There's no reason that we shouldn't have a report in hand. And it really does feel like, the PR machine is in full effect and is spinning this up so that this report will drop at some point late July, early August, when nobody's talking about hockey. And the hope, obviously, for the league is that none of these guys, none of the people who could be affiliated with the NHL are involved. But you look at it, I won't recklessly speculate about who was involved or wasn't, or what one person did or might not have done. The Flyers clearly believe that Carter Hart might not be part of their future for one of a few reasons. One, could it be in a trade? Just because you're trying to rebuild, you want to get assets. They traded for a goalie. They signed Kozlov. They drafted multiple goalies. Ivan Fedotov remains out there as a potential, down the line.
Yeah.
He won't, he'll be late 20s if he comes over at the end of that new contract. But like, you have all these guys in the pipeline. That's not what a team does when they think that they have their long-term goalie in place. And I mean, look, if you want to be a cynic about it, you can look at it and say, well, maybe they know something. Maybe they think that he's going to get suspended or he's involved. I'm not going to say that. I certainly am not going to speculate on that. You just look at that little bit of info and you go, all right, that's interesting. Anthony's reported, previously that there were teams that made conditional offers to the Flyers. If he's not involved, we'll give you X, Y, Z. We've known since, I don't know, well before the trade deadline that not a single team in the league was going to ever consider trading for Carter Hart or any of the other players who could potentially be involved in this until the official findings were released. Nobody's going to take a guy at his word. They need for this to play out, because if you think a PR disaster is like a racial slur, or you think a PR disaster is, what Mitchell Miller did, the details of this that came out from the court filing are so horrific, so graphic, so unconscionable that like any of these players, if they're proven to have committed something wrong here, are going to be radioactive, do not belong in the league, should be lifetime suspended, like lifetime banned, go enjoy trying to play in like, I don't know, some startup beer league in Nicaragua or something, like,
Nicaragua.
Otherwise I don't see it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's kind of where I'm at too. And you know what? I'll tell everyone the truth. So I haven't until recently, because I think things may change. I didn't think Carter Hart was involved with this. So I didn't really keep an eye on what was happening going on. You hear some things and you're like, all right, I better get reading up on this and, know the ins and outs of what's happening. And got to tell you, like, this is that's some crazy stuff that happened. And I don't want to speculate, but even if you were in that room, to stay in that room with whatever was going on, like, you got to be, I don't know. I don't want to speculate or call anybody names or whatever, but there's some bad stuff. And if you were involved in that, if somebody was involved, there's going to be there should be some major implications, because it was a terrible thing that happened.
It's horrific. And by the way, if you read it, and I would warn anybody who decides that they want to read it that, like, if you're triggered by the kinds of things that this clearly relates to, don't read it, don't look at it.
Yeah.
Whoever player one was, John Doe 1, is like, it's sociopathic, is the best.
He kind of knew what he was doing, right?
Engaged in an act. Afterwards, allegedly, this is all alleged, so I'll put alleged, 50 times, allegedly texted teammates to allegedly offer alleged services from the victim, whether or not that was actually consented to in a sober state or anything, then left to go get food, came back, allegedly things were happening, and he or she, I think we probably say John Doe, it's he, allegedly sat down and started eating his food while things were allegedly going on. Now, I don't know. I don't roll in circles where things like this are normal or are in any way, shape, or form something that would be like par for the course. So I can't say that this thing does or doesn't happen all the time. But man, that's pretty damn messed up. So
what really did it for me in there. Sorry, Russ, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go ahead.
And I don't want to say that I was joking around, but after I read this, talking to my guys, and I said, I don't know about you guys, but I don't recall too many times where I needed to, record on my phone that, hey, there was consent here, right? Like, just in case you go to the police or that. Like, I haven't had too many experiences like that. So to me, that was dead giveaway that what you did or what you were doing, you knew was morally wrong. You chose to do it anyway. And for me, that's some scary stuff, So I if you don't know what happened in this whole thing, like Russ said, if you're sensitive to this kind of stuff, maybe don't. But if you want to know what happened, there is information out there for you to read. So won't really talk about that too much more. But where I wanted to talk about Hart, and I'm going to let you run here in a minute, Russ. You mentioned the Flyers are kind of stacking up the pipeline. They went out and traded for Cal Peterson, who many at first thought was a cap dump. And yeah, it is for Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. but the Flyers still have 3 goaltenders on the roster. And yeah, it's not uncommon for this time in the year for teams to have 3 goalies on the roster, but I think we're all forgetting about Felix Sandstrom. And, I brought the topic up yesterday because I knew I wanted to talk about it today. And many people went right to, Sandstrom's going to be the guy put on waivers. And I'm like, well, based off the information out there with the investigation, the uncertainty with Hart, they tried to trade him a couple months ago or last month. I'm not so sure that that's the case. And the point was, if something does happen with Hart, where he does face a suspension of some sort, yada, yada, they need the 2 other guys on the roster, Sandstrom and Peterson. Any thoughts there, Russ?
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't see them parting with a player at all. I mean, again, it all hinges on the investigation. It all hinges on what the findings are. Sandstrom's not a guy that like you're going to build around. Like no. I think if you go back 2 years, I think Sandstrom's stock was a lot higher. And he's kind of proven to be what he is, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to turn out to be, a stud goalie or even like a very good backup. But yeah, I don't see a scenario where they cut ties with a player, especially knowing that, again, either there is a suspension because of a finding or they trade Carter Hart. Yeah. Like either way, they're going to need to have that spot filled, right?
To me, it looks like they're covering their ass because something's coming one way or another.
One way or the other. And again, you have to be very, very careful here. We're not saying that Carter Hart did anything wrong. It's all it's alleged. All right. But that is the truth. They clearly, for whatever reason, have been stocking up at that position, which is not something that you see like the Rangers doing with Shesterkin in goal. It's not something you see Tampa doing with Vasilevsky in goal. Like it's not what you do with your franchise netminder that you think is going to be under contract for 6+ years. Like, it's just not what you do.
Right. To me, it shows, lack of, if they were confident that Hart's name's cleared and everything's going to be honky-dory moving forward, maybe you need to, if they're looking to move cap space like they did with Tony DeAngelo, maybe you are waiving Sandstrom unconditionally, whatever it is. They haven't done that, which to me signals they're not sure. They're waiting to see. So, Russ, we've had you on for a little over 15 minutes. I told you 10 yesterday. You guys got a big surprise coming out. You dropped a little hint. I think it was this morning or last night. Yep. Do you have any? You just want to tell us what it is now?
Yeah, I can confirm it's not Kate Smith. So there's that.
Not Kate Smith.
Not Kate Smith. Now listen, it is what I would. Between Ant Bundy and I, we have all agreed it is the biggest guest that we've ever had in the history of Snow the Goalie. We've had a lot of big ones. There have been people who have guessed like, oh, is it Danny Briere? No, we've had Danny Briere before. Like, oh, is it Homer? Is it Clarkey? Nope, we've had them before. Like, no. Is it Torts? No, we had Torts on a thing at the beginning of last year. No. This is bigger. This is something that was such a big deal that we didn't put it to risk by having it be like a remote thing. We didn't try to staff it ourselves. We had another company film it, mic it, light it to make sure that it's the best potential, interview experience. And that when we put it up on YouTube and in the podcast feeds, that it looks and it sounds great. So we're going to drop that on Monday. We're going to be putting that on YouTube, on the Snow the Goalie channel, and it'll also hit all the podcast feeds on Monday. We're going to do it as a live show, and then we're going to have that interview we'll lead into it. We'll do the interview. We'll have thoughts and reactions and everything, and our insane YouTube community, especially that for some reason decided to wake up with us unannounced at 6:15 this morning. I fully expect them to be filling up the comments with a million questions, comments, and concerns throughout that interview and when it's done. So, it's going to be a blast.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to that, Russ. And, we're happy for you guys and all the success you guys are having. And, looking forward to Monday. Have a good weekend, man. Thanks for doing this.
You have a great one too. And, go Flyers, guys. Yeah, everybody out there.
Things are starting to turn over a little bit.
Things are starting to turn the right direction. We can all feel good about it.
Yes, sir. All right, Russ. Enjoy your weekend. Take care.
Catch you later. Bye.
There he is. Russ Joy, everybody. All right. A lot of information there. Some good, some not so great. We have a couple more topics to get to before we wrap up the show. We have about 10 minutes left. Hopefully everybody on the Twitter space could hear Russ. Well, we do have a comment, it looks like. Let me get to that. Zach, laugh out loud at the entire Tony D situation. Literally can't help but laugh. and how incompetent Fletcher was at his job. Nothing you can do but look forward. Yeah, totally agree. And that's what we're doing. New era of Orange, right? All right, so let's get to some other topics here. So obviously the waiving of Tony DeAngelo, the buyout, means the Flyers have a couple million more in cap space. Is that going to be used for Morgan Frost, who is the only RFA left unsigned at the moment? We've seen a couple bridge deals with Cam York and Noah Cates. Do we see a bridge deal with Morgan Frost? I think the Flyers, after the buyout of DeAngelo, I want to say, and I could be wrong, so if you're listening live and you know, please correct me. I think they have around $4 million in projected cap space to sign Frost. Now, do they use all of the $4 million? Do they give him multiple years? I would like to see a bridge deal with Frost too. But I also wouldn't be mad at an extended 4 or 5 year deal with a very low cap hit either, right? Because we saw him come on towards the end of the year. I think he can do it again. What do you guys think? I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We have just about 8 minutes left in the show. So chime in. What did you think of the waiving of DeAngelo, the buyout of DeAngelo, the potential Frost contract, and what do you make of Carter Hart and the Hockey Canada investigation? We'll go to Amadeo first. Sending you an invite to speak, I think, Amadeo. So whenever you're invite to speak. Let me do that again. There we go. We're good.
Okay. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a Friday, right?
Yeah, it is.
I'm ready for the weekend.
Definitely ready for the weekend. It's hot as hell out. I hate it. I was outside walking the dog earlier today, and I walked out for 2 seconds. My back was soaked.
Nice.
One of those situations.
Yeah, you need a pool.
It was funny too when we were talking about this whole Tony DeAngelo thing. I was listening to the Stow the Goalie pod from earlier this morning, and like right when Anthony said the trade is still happening, I see the tweet right next to me that Tony DeAngelo has been bought out. Like,
oh no,
couldn't have been worse timing.
Things went south pretty quick, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to like think of the entire thing because I did see Sam Filippo's little thread on the Flyers. We're just getting a little bit impatient about waiting. I'm also just thinking about, like, what does this mean for Carolina and Erik Karlsson? Because, you know, them and Pittsburgh were the two rumored teams to be finalists, quote unquote, for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that's the case. But it had to be done at the end of the day. And you're saving more money than with buying him out than retaining his salary. You also save another salary spot or retention spot in case you have to trade someone else, like a Konechny, like a Walton, or anyone else with a bad contract on this team.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Didn't think that they were going to just let him go for nothing. Personally, I thought DeAngelo still had value. And I think he does have value around the league, but not at $5 million. Excuse me.
Fletcher masterclass right there.
Right, and that's where he really – I just don't understand. You gave up all that to get him, to sign him for $5 million. You know, when you think about that trade as a whole, makes no sense. Sure, you bring in a player that can help your power play. I think it's still finished near the bottom of the league. Not a great reputation. You only signed him for 2 years, so it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. The entire deal, it's just a moronic trade, especially where they were in their development. To buy him out after a season shows you what, and Russ mentioned earlier, shows you what the Flyers, Briere Jones thought of that deal. Just cut ties and move forward.
Just to say, if in the nightmare that Chuck Fletcher was still the GM, he would have to have given away like 2 first-rounders to trade away that contract because that's how he works.
Yeah, brutal, man.
Jeez. And for the Carter Hart situation with Team Canada, the news will eventually, looking forward to hearing that just because of how gory the details are. I hope Hart's not involved. I have been wrong before. We just have to wait for everything to happen. And that's basically it because it's just such a difficult topic to talk about.
Yeah. So it would be very easy for me to speculate on what I think could happen or based off what I know right now. But I don't want to – I think it's a serious thing when you don't know for sure and, you're throwing a guy's name out there. So – on this Spaces, on this YouTube show, I will not reveal what I've heard, what I know. But I think it's interesting, and I can comment on the hockey side that the Flyers have 3 goalies on the roster right now. They just drafted 2. Yeah, it's going to be a couple of years before they get to the AHL. They're bringing Kolosov over next season. They still have Ursan. Like, the signs are all there if you guys want to connect dots. They're not 100% certain that he's in the clear. If he was 100% in the clear, he might have been traded by now. So the signs and the dots are there for you guys to connect. It's all about, do you want to believe that this kid who we see every day on pregame interviews, postgame interviews, seems like a puppy dog, seems like a nice kid. So how could he do something like this? Well, we don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, there definitely are dots to connect there. It could be basically like the situation that you brought up. It could be also the situation that they're acquiring so many goaltending assets because they plan on trading him and they know he's not involved. But at the end of the day, you just got to wait and find out if he's a piece of shit or not. That's basically it.
Right. Hopefully he's not. Right. Exactly. So we got about 4 minutes left here. Amadeo, anything else you wanted to touch on? Anything on Morgan Frost?
I think probably we'll see similar to what Cates and York got. Maybe Frost gets maybe a bridge deal, maybe Briere goes the route of long-term, very cheap contract, like a lot of teams do with their young players in this league. Maybe that's the route Danny goes, but you do have the chance with the buyout now to get under the LTIR threshold, and I think that's one of the most important things Danny is trying to do. So you sign Morgan Frost, and then you can go chill out on the beach. Yeah,
there you go. Your summer's started. Hopefully, he seems like the guy that's going to work right through it, though. I don't know if he's got an off season in him. What do you think?
Honestly, he's probably going to sign Morgan Frost. He's going to be looking at other trades, drafting for next year, focusing on how the hell are we going to win the draft lottery next year. Maybe he's speaking to Gary Bettman already.
Yeah. I would agree. That'd be nice. We do need to win one. Seller for Celebrini, right?
Oh, yeah. I firmly believe that we are winning the draft lottery next year. Put a pin in it. Put whatever you want. I just feel that the NHL rewards teams that admit they're rebuilding. I just feel like it's going to happen once.
Yeah, hopefully it does. So we got a couple comments on YouTube here I want to read. If you're still listening in the Spaces, looks like there's a bunch of people listening. If you have any comments on today's topics or questions, ask them now. We have about 2.5 minutes left in the show. Here's a comment from Ty Shelton on YouTube. Don't mind the termination. Would have been nice if they moved him at the deadline. Sure, they could have gotten a decent pick back. Yeah, I think if that was the scenario that played out, they would have gotten something back. At the same time, what are you going to do? He's going to be around the team, camp, distraction type stuff. I think, and I respect them for doing it. They want to turn the page on whatever was happening as quick as possible. Anything associated with negativity, they want to put behind them. I don't know if this is a good segue or comparison or not, but we saw or heard what happened the other day during the Garnet Hathaway press conference. Flyers immediately came out with a statement, and they apologized for it. They didn't let it, just kind of sit around and fester, right? And I respect them for doing that. And with this Tony DeAngelo situation, they didn't want to wait around. They were proactive, if you will, And I think when teams start to see that, hey, the Flyers aren't going to wait on us. We need to make a decision. Danny Briere is still new to this. He needs to develop a reputation, right? That, okay, Briere is not the kind of guy that's going to wait. If I want to do something with this guy, I got to do it, right? Because if you kind of let people wait on things, they go search other options. They go, all right, what's my plan B, plan C? Briere's waiting. I could put him on the back burner. Do you know what I mean? Now DeAngelo goes through unconditional waivers. I'm not sure. I think Carolina's low on that list. But if they wanted DeAngelo, there's a good shot that they may not get him. So maybe the pressure's on for them to trade for Karlsson a little bit. I like that. I like that kind of reputation. And no BS kind of guy. If you want to make a trade, let's make the trade. I'm not waiting. Because we have other things that we can do. DeAngelo is not at the top of our list for of important things we need to get done. So, you buy him out, you move forward, you sign Morgan Frost, who is going to be part of your future. and you move forward. Comment from Dan Knightley: they should trade Carter Hart, Sean Couturier, Travis Sanheim, Travis Konechny, Morgan Frost, and Scott Lawton. So basically anybody that was here back in 2019-20. Yeah, I think some of those guys could still get moved. I'm surprised Lawton didn't get traded. Amadeo, go ahead.
That's a trade deadline move.
Trade deadline move. Okay.
I feel like he has way more value at the trade deadline for a team that is going all in for a cup push.
Yeah, I agree. And he's got a great contract. Travis Konechny, I think they could keep him or move him. So what was I listening to today? I forget what I was listening to this morning, so I apologize. But Konechny is the kind of guy they can keep around unless they're blown away with the trade offer. And for me, Ottawa seems like a perfect match, but we'll see. They just traded DeBrincat, and they have the assets to trade for Konechny. We'll see. Offseason still somewhat young. But yeah.
I think if you look at the three players of Hart, Konechny, and Malton, I think Konechny is the more likely to stay than those other two.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Torts really likes him. Briere really likes him. I like him for whatever that's worth. Yeah, I would say keep him around. You need guys like that. He's only 26. By the time things get going here, he'll be 29, 30, which, you need a vet guy or two. And maybe he could be that guy. Who knows what kind of money he'll be making by that time, but I like him. I like the player. That's where I think things get a little hairy is does the money work when it's time to get going for your rebuild, when it's time to start adding. So that's it. All right. That's we're about 31 minutes in. I wanted to keep this to a half an hour. Amadeo, thanks for chiming in. We appreciate everybody who's hanging out in the Twitter space. Thanks for listening. Everybody on YouTube, thanks for hanging out in the chat. Jack, Dave, Zach, Ty, Dan, we'll be back next Friday for another edition of the Friday Flyover. See everybody. Have a good weekend.